All right, everyone. Instant reaction time. Josh Callaway, Tom Green, Collin Kennedy with you on a Saturday evening where a bombshell has been dropped. Oklahoma defensive coordinator Zac Alley is leaving the Sooners to go to West Virginia after just one season. Guys, a stunner here, obviously. I mean, this has been floating around, so it's not a complete shock. It didn't come from completely out of nowhere. But it had seemed the last couple of days like there was a lot of confidence on the Oklahoma side that they were going to be able to pony up and keep Zac around. Really, the one bright spot of what was obviously a nightmare 2024 season was Zac Alley and what he did to help Brent Venables with the defense. And now he's gone 1 year in. Where your minds go first? Just a shocker here as Brent Venables' protege is gone. I mean, 1 year and he's gone. It's wild. It's stunning.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised. I know we discussed it earlier in the week when we started hearing some of the chatter about West Virginia. But like you said, Oklahoma felt pretty confident that it was going to be able to retain Zac Alley. The defense was obviously a bright spot on a, otherwise pretty bleak season overall. And Zac Alley was the guy that was kind of responsible for a lot of that. We heard players throughout the spring, throughout the summer and the offseason talking about just like how much more digestible he made the defense and like easy to understand, and just in terms of communicating things and really helping them take that next step in their progression, in year 3 under Brent Venables. Like, he was that middleman that just basically translated everything much simpler for them. And I think the results panned out over the course of the season. But man, it's a tough look. A guy that, like you said, that's Brent Venables' protege. I mean, he's a guy, Zac Alley has referred to Brent Venables as like a second father to him. He talks like him. He sounds like him. We've joked about it all season, but for him to leave after just 1 year into a 3-year deal, for what from the outside, a lot of people will say, not necessarily even a lateral job, but a step down, going from, an SEC defensive coordinator role to the Big 12. I mean, that is a tough look for Oklahoma right now.
This is a guy who spent several years studying under Brent as a student assistant or a GA when the two were at Clemson. Like you mentioned, Josh, this is kind of the individual who Brent sees as his guy. I mean, this is someone who Brent almost groomed to become the next version of himself. And now he's gone. Now, he's leaving to work with someone who obviously means a lot to him in Rich Rodriguez. Rich is taking over there at West Virginia. And I think that the natural inclination is going to reflect negatively on Oklahoma's program. But for Zac specifically, this is an opportunity to take further control of a defensive unit, have more of a say as to what goes on that side of the ball. Maybe not necessarily have your mentor always looking over your shoulder. And I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but Zac Alley not only getting all of that in his now corner, but we had heard that Virginia was going to give him a pay raise, and money talks. And so, look, talking to some folks over the last couple of days, even around the kickoff of the Armed Forces Bowl, there was a belief that Zac Alley to West Virginia was very real. Like, there was a very real shot for the Mountaineers to swoop in and get Brent Venables' guy. And now that this deal is done, Oklahoma really is going to have to find a way to recover quickly, because I don't think that OU really anticipated this happening. The aftermath, whatever it's going to look like, it's just another layer to what's a really, really unfortunate outlook for this offseason.
It's optically just horrible, obviously, for West Virginia to come in and scoop your DC. Look, obviously, Brent Venables is a defensive coordinator by trade. It's his defense, right? So I don't think any of us anticipate the defense is going to just be horrible now without Zac Alley. But the reality is, and we talked about it all season and back when the hire was made, Zac Alley was a guy brought in, unlike Ted Roof before, that Brent Venables trusted could actually coach the defense, and Brent Venables could be more of a CEO type of coach, kind of foresee everything, not be so hands-on with the defense all the time. We saw that in the open practice windows that we got to have. Like, he was able to roam around and actually have input everywhere a lot more than he did before. And after 1 year, that's over. it just looks horrible. And it's hard to not feel like it's just a humongous indictment on Brent Venables. I mean, I don't know how else you could take this for everything we just said. I mean, Zac Alley called Brent Venables his second dad. He referred to him as that back in August. Like, this was supposed to be a tied at the hip relationship. I don't know what that's going to be like moving forward. I don't want to speak for either of those guys, but like, this is stunning, and this leaves Oklahoma in a brutal spot because they again have to replace both coordinators in the 1 year, which they just did, and it didn't go well, at least on one side of the ball. It's bad. It's really bad. I mean, this is as optically bad as it gets. And Oklahoma, I mean, it just feels like it's all slipping away, right? I mean, it just feels like everything that could go wrong is going wrong for Oklahoma right now, and this is as bad as anything that's happened. Again, I don't want to overstate it, but at the same time, it feels like you can't. It's just, this is a disaster, frankly. This is a disaster to lose your DC to West Virginia. It's stunning. I mean, I don't know. I'm at a little bit of a loss. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it is really tough to see, a guy that was basically Brent's right-hand man, a guy that was groomed for that position, to leave for another job. On the other hand, like, it's not like it was just any other job, to be fair. I mean, he has a pre-existing relationship with Rich Rodriguez. They worked together for 3 years, first as coordinators at ULM on Terry Bowden's staff. Then, when Rich Rodriguez got the Jacksonville State head coaching job, he tabbed Alley as his defensive coordinator for 2 years, and they were really good. I mean, Zach had a really effective defense there. So there is a pre-existing relationship there. They've worked together for multiple years, obviously different sides of the ball, so they know how to complement each other in terms of what they want to do. But again, it's just tough for a guy that, has been basically with Brent Venables for, most of the last, 15 years or 12 years, with a few years off in between there. It's really tough, and it's unfortunate because of the strides that this defense took this season, in his first season under Zac Alley. And look, Zac Alley was asked about the speculation yesterday after the 21-20 loss to Navy. He made an appearance. He wasn't available to the media, but He did make an appearance on Oklahoma's, in-house post-game radio show, and he was asked straight up about his future. And, he didn't dispel the rumors. He kind of sidestepped them, but he also expressed an eagerness to get to work on next season and building on this, building on what Oklahoma did defensively this year. So I think that there was a lot of confidence that he was going to be back, even after, not quite denying the reports, but addressing them to some extent. So again, it's still a little bit surprising. Obviously, it didn't come out of left field, but again, it's just really tough for Oklahoma right now.
Yeah, to say the least. Colin, anything else as far as just the shock of it? And we can start to kind of speculate a little bit on what Oklahoma can do. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of, we were both kind of saying that you dropped out for a second there. It's just optically obviously horrible, and it looks like an indictment on Venables and just kind of the overall future direction of this thing. It's stunning. I mean, it really is. Like, this is just bad. It's just disaster, whatever word you want to put on it. Feels like that's where we're at right now when you lose your DC after 1 year who was your guy. It's not good.
Look, I don't think that this is necessarily something like we've talked about that Oklahoma didn't rule out as a possibility. But I think on a similar note, kind of what you guys are talking about, you're seeing some of the reactions pour out from the players in that locker room, and they're all pretty not only shocked, but dare I say a little bit upset. I mean, this isn't something that they thought was going to take place, and now you're seeing guys like Kobe McKenzie, Robert Spears Jennings come out with the reactions, and it's more commonly put, disappointed. And I totally get it. I think this is one of the last things that you needed to have happen if you're Oklahoma. Like, one thing you had going for yourself was you had two foundational pieces in your young coordinators to work forward into the future. Zac Alley kind of felt like the guy, too, that was going to alleviate Brent Venables of a lot of pressure. We know how involved Brent had been to start his tenure as a head coach at Oklahoma on that defense. And a big thing for OU was having him be a little bit less involved so he could be more the head coach. And Zac was supposed to be the guy that was going to do that for a very long time. Someone like that leaving that type of post, it puts you in a world of hurt for a few different reasons now, right? Just not only optics, but who is going to be the individual that can do what Zac Alley did in a similar sense? I don't know that there's really as good of a fit as what Zac Alley was out there. And when you see someone like that opt for a different path, obviously it's a rough look, but it really kind of puts you in that bind. And the last thing I would say from a surprise or shock factor to your question, I don't really think Oklahoma has a full pivot plan yet. I don't know that there is a hot board right now. I don't know if there's an extensive list of candidates put together to go after right away because Zac Alley is supposed to be the guy for the next few years to come. A lot has to happen now over the next few months, and it has to go very right. And we talked about this a little bit after the Armed Forces Bowl. There was going to be a lot anyway, but unforeseen changes were going to add to the laundry list. And this is certainly a task in front for Oklahoma.
I want to ask you guys before we get out of here, and we'll keep it on the shorter end because we'll have more time to figure out what Oklahoma can do moving forward and how they're going to fix this. But I want to ask you guys kind of the big picture of the Brent Venables part of this, because that's the elephant in the room. I think that everyone is asking themselves right now is like, is this? It's not over because it's not literally over. Brent Venables is going to coach the team in 2025. I mean that's going to happen, but it feels like it's over, right? Like it's all we see the way it's going, right? The writing's on the wall, the way it's going. Where are you guys at for Brent Venables being able to fix it, and that this can still happen, or is Oklahoma just doomed? I mean, where are you guys kind of at on that part of it? Because that's the elephant in the room that everyone wants to know, and every OU fan is asking themselves right now: is Oklahoma cooked? Like, is it over? Is Brent Venables cooked? Is 2025 going to just be a disaster? And then, because I mean, it comes on the same day. They got another portal tight end from Pittsburgh State today. Like the transfer portal class, we talked about it, is nothing glamorous on paper, right? Obviously, the season they just had was terrible. They just lost to Navy in the damn bowl game yesterday. Like it's been a lot of bad all season, but especially in the last 48 hours. And then this is the cherry on top of losing your DC. It feels like it's all spiraling out of control. Is that an overstatement? Where are you guys kind of at on that part of it, or is it salvageable?
I think it's salvageable. As important as Zac Alley was to the defensive success this season, you have to remember Brent Venables is still one of the top defensive minds of the last quarter century. Like, at the end of the day, the bones of that defense, that is his defense. Zac Alley was the one calling the plays, but this is Brent Venables' defense. So it's not going to just fall off a cliff overnight because Zac Alley took the West Virginia job. Brent Venables needs to, like Collin said, he needs to pivot and figure out the next steps to replace Zac Alley. I'm sure we'll get into later what options Oklahoma might have, but it's not the end of the world. It's not the defense isn't just going to fall back to what it was before Brent Venables got there. There's still a very good foundation there. Now, will any other players hit the transfer portal? That's a bigger question after losing their coordinator. But at the end of the day, Brent Venables is still a incredible defensive coach, so I don't think there's going to be a great amount of panic onto what the defense will look like moving forward. But it is a big question of who will take over the defense because, like you said, all the changes you already had, the terrible season you just had, what you're bringing in the transfer portal, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback coming in, new wide receivers, still questions on the offensive line in the future. It's like losing Zac Alley just adds another layer of complexity that further complicates what Brent Venables has to do in 2025 to, turn things around in Oklahoma and remain the coach at Oklahoma.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of I don't know.
I know.
I wish I had a more solid answer to the question, because on one hand, I look at this and I go, kind of to Tom's point, losing Zac Alley singularly does not change a ton. It makes things tougher for sure. This is a brutal loss. But in the grand scheme, the laundry list, it's getting longer, but I don't know that it necessarily shifts all that much, if that makes sense, because the advantage that Oklahoma does have, not only to Tom's point that this is Brent Venables' defense, a lot of the guys on staff defensively for OU weren't Zac Alley guys, right?
Sure.
So, like, a lot of the minds on staff currently, Todd Bates, Miguel Chavis, Jay Valai, I don't think that this move changes anything for them, but I think it makes things a little bit more tough because this happens while the transfer portal window is winding down, and you're not going to have a coordinator currently in place to sell the vision on that side of the ball. Brent can certainly do that, but that gaping hole is going to impact some portal recruitments. Also, like Tom said, does this change anything for some of these players defensively that Brent expected to come back? I don't know. I mean, Zac Alley was there 1 year, but do these guys want to wait around and see now who's going to be coordinating this defense going into next year? It's a lot of unknowns that, as we know, the domino effect of change in college football, it can make things a little bit more significant as time goes on. And this is just it's just one of the last things you needed, because going back to the beginning of this, I think the I don't know for me stems from the fact that now this creates a chain reaction that adds on to what was already a pretty long chain, right? Like, they're trying to navigate a lot, and to do it all effectively. The same question I asked you, Josh, in the instant reaction after the bowl game, and I'd pose again, can they get all this change done in an offseason? Can they get it all right in the span of a few months? And can they counter any unforeseen changes that have not only arrived now, but could come from this? I really do have a lot of belief in Brent Venables as a human being and as a coach, but this is a burden moving forward. Yeah. And I think it'd be tough for anybody. And so I'm very curious to see how he'll react to everything that's going on.
No, you nailed it. I think back to what we just said at M&G Carter Stadium yesterday, doing the instant reaction after the bowl game, which was, we are asking so much in one off season. And that was before this, which we brought it up on the instant reaction yesterday, this possibility. Like, we don't even know what else is there. Well, here you go. One day later, you're in a DC search again. Like, it's just, man, I mean, Oklahoma coming off a horrible year has to somehow fix 100 things. It feels like the schedule's brutal again. Like, it feels like you're asking a lot. But we'll see. Any final thoughts here? We'll have a lot more time to talk about. We'll have the DC hot boards up and rolling. We have to do the coordinator search again. Students Illustrated is not even 2 years old, and we're going to have our fourth coordinator search. So we're getting seasoned at this, and we'll have tons of coverage for you. But here we go. Any final thoughts?
Did I bring the Auburn dysfunction with me to Oklahoma?
I think you definitely did, because we are in unforeseen times for this program right now.
I'm so tired. The last thing I want to say as I get out of here, I think this also kind of puts into perspective the other part of the Brent Venables tenure, which is, how does he want to go about this hire? Like, is the buddy system going to be put in place again, which a lot of Oklahoma fans are going to be curious about? I think the other thing that I want to bring up right now, other programs going to leverage this into pursuit of the assistants on staff. We know that, I believe Auburn and a few others went after Todd Bates. Michigan went after Miguel Chavis, Jay Valai. Some of these guys have fielded calls.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are you going to give them a look for this defensive coordinator opening, the guys that are on staff? And if you don't, what does that mean, or what do conversations look like around them? It's a lot, man. It's a lot. It's a lot of uncomfortable talks coming up here pretty soon,
to say the least. Not good. Zac Alley gone 1 year. And if you count Joe John Finley, who I don't see why you wouldn't, he was the OC for half a season, 7 coordinators in 4 years for Brent Venables, offense and defense. Just not a winning formula in any way. In any way. And we'll see what they do at this DC spot. Again, Students Illustrated, Oakland.247sports.com. We're going to have all the DC search coverage for you as we continue to update all the latest there. As Brent Venables back in the market looking for a coordinator again, as Zac Alley goes to West Virginia. We'll see you on Monday for the Sooners Illustrated podcast, where I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit more, as we will a lot over the next probably however many weeks it takes to hire a DC. Full coverage over on Oklahoma247sports.com. Zac Alley gone after one season. For Collin Kennedy, Tom Green, I'm Josh Callaway signing off for now from Sooners Illustrated.